This person's finally ashamed of what he did to you. My beloved child, tonight, the air around you carries a trembling truth, and as you listen, you will feel the weight of every heartbeat as if the world itself has paused to witness what has finally begun to unfold. There is a person out there, someone who once walked away from you with pride stitched into every step, someone who believed that your silence meant defeat, but now, that very silence echoes in his mind like a haunting bell. He is finally ashamed of what he did to you, and the journey that led him to this moment did not begin with regret, but with arrogance, with a belief that you were fragile, replaceable, forgettable. Yet life has a mysterious way of turning mirrors toward those who refuse to look inward. Tonight, as he stares at his own reflection, he does not see victory, he sees loss, he sees the shadow of the person he became, and he realizes that the greatest mistake he ever made was underestimating the strength of the heart he once chose to break. You see, there was a time when he laughed at the distance he created, when he convinced himself that walking away was power, that ignoring your worth made him untouchable. But time watches everything. It records every intention, every action, every wound that goes unseen. And slowly, life began to peel away the illusions he wrapped himself in. People he trusted faded. The applause he chased disappeared. The paths he thought were golden turned into lonely corridors. And in those empty corridors, a truth began whispering to him, not loudly, not suddenly, but painfully, relentlessly, that the person he abandoned was the very person who once prayed for his peace, who believed in his goodness even when he did not deserve it. That realization struck him like a storm he could no longer outrun. He remembers the moments where you waited, where you forgave, where you stayed even when it hurt, and now, as memory floods his mind, his chest tightens with a shame he cannot hide from anymore. There are nights when he dreams of conversations that never happened, apologies he never gave, and he wakes up with tears that he never thought his pride would allow. The world around him may still see confidence on his face, but inside, there is a battlefield, a war between the person he pretended to be and the truth he can no longer silence. He replays every word he spoke to you, every moment he dismissed your feelings, every time he turned his back while you held your pain alone. And now, something inside him trembles, not from fear of losing you, but from fear of having already lost the person who once held his world with gentle hands. He is ashamed, deeply, silently, overwhelmingly ashamed, because he finally understands that hurting you was not an act of strength, it was the greatest weakness of his soul. As he walks through his days now, the universe seems to remind him of you in unexpected ways, a familiar song, a familiar place, a memory he cannot erase. And each reminder brings a quiet ache, a realization that no matter how far he runs, he cannot escape the truth he carries within. He understands now that love is not measured by dominance or control, but by responsibility, by compassion, by the courage to protect rather than destroy. And the shame he feels is not a punishment, it is a mirror showing him everything he failed to be when you needed him most. He does not know how to rewrite the past, and perhaps he never will, but tonight, he finally stands face to face with the consequences of his actions, and for the first time, his heart whispers the words his voice cannot yet speak, that he wronged you, that he betrayed the goodness you offered, and that the weight he carries now is the price of the choices he made. And as you hear this, my beloved child, you must know this truth, his shame is not your burden anymore. His regret does not define your worth, nor does his awakening rewrite your story. You survived the storms he walked away from. You rebuilt yourself in silence. You grew stronger in the spaces where he expected you to fall. And now, the power does not lie in his remorse, it lives in your resilience, in the path you continue to walk with dignity, with grace, with a heart that refused to turn cold. Something profound is unfolding, and every moment ahead holds a deeper revelation, not about his regret, but about your rising, your transformation, and the destiny that began the moment you chose to heal. Tonight, another chapter unfolds in silence, where the echoes of truth grow louder than the excuses he once clung to, and every moment feels like the universe is rearranging itself around the weight of realization settling into his heart. He walks through familiar streets with unfamiliar thoughts, replaying scenes of the past like an unending film he cannot pause, and with each frame he feels a deeper sting of accountability. The world no longer moves with the same confidence for him, the lights feel dimmer, the noise feels heavier, and even in crowded places he feels alone with the truth he tried to outrun. What once felt like victory now feels hollow, and the pride he wore like armor has melted into a quiet, aching understanding that the person he hurt was not just a chapter in his story, you were the cornerstone of a life he was too blind to cherish. That awareness follows him everywhere now, like a shadow that refuses to leave his side. He remembers the times when he dismissed your voice, when he chose distance over understanding, and every memory now arrives with an invisible weight pressing against his chest. There are moments when he wants to speak, to step forward, to undo the silence he built around you, but the shame inside him holds him back, because he knows that words can no longer erase the choices he made. He feels the difference between guilt and responsibility, and this time life does not allow him to escape either. The world reflects his actions back to him in subtle mirrors, conversations he overhears, stories he witnesses, people he meets who value what he once took for granted. Each reflection deepens the truth: he was given something rare, and he mishandled it. And now, that realization sits within him like a storm waiting to break, a storm that whispers that the real loss was never your presence, it was the version of himself he could have become if he had chosen love with courage instead of ego. There are nights where he tries to convince himself that time will soften the memories, that the distance will fade the feelings, yet the opposite happens. Your presence grows stronger inside his mind, not as regret alone, but as a reminder of the person he wishes he had been. He feels the difference between having you and deserving you. He feels the distance between apology and accountability. And in that distance, he finally understands that every tear you hid, every moment you stayed quiet, every time you carried your pain alone, was not weakness, it was strength he never honored. Now, the silence speaks louder than any confrontation could. It tells him that he cannot rewrite history, that he cannot step back into a moment where he once stood carelessly, and that truth burns deeper than any punishment life could give him. As he stands at this crossroad of realization, life places choices in front of him once again, but this time, they are not about winning, not about pride, not about control. They are about facing himself, about accepting that growth begins where comfort ends. He feels a trembling inside his heart, a quiet transformation beginning, where the person he once pretended to be begins to crumble, and the person he could become starts to emerge from the pain of self-awareness. It is not dramatic, it is not loud, it is slow, reflective, and deeply human. He learns that shame is not meant to destroy him, but to awaken him, to lead him through the uncomfortable corridors of truth so that he never repeats the mistakes that brought him here. And with every breath he takes, he realizes that this awakening came at a cost measured not in time, but in the loss of someone who gave him their purest form of care. And as this realization deepens, my beloved listener, the story is no longer just about his regret, it is about your rise beyond the wounds he once caused. The world sees you now as someone who learned to stand taller, someone who turned pain into quiet strength, someone who became unshakable not through bitterness, but through resilience. His shame remains his path to walk, his reflection to face, his lesson to carry, while your journey moves forward toward something greater, something brighter, something that was waiting for you beyond every tear you ever shed. And even now, beneath the surface of everything that has happened, something powerful is approaching, a turning point where destiny reveals that the story was never about the one who hurt you, it was always about the one who healed. My beloved child, as the night deepens and the world grows quieter, a new layer of truth begins to unfold within his heart, and this time it does not arrive as a sudden realization, but as a steady, undeniable current that pulls him back into every moment he once ignored. He walks through his days carrying a silence that feels heavier than any noise around him, a silence filled with memories he can no longer push away. He remembers the way you trusted him, the way you believed in him even when he doubted himself, and now those memories return not as comfort, but as a gentle ache that refuses to fade. The world around him looks the same, yet nothing feels familiar anymore. Every step feels like a reminder of what he lost, every breath feels like an echo of the choices he made. And deep inside, he realizes that the distance he created was never between two people, it was between who he was, and who he could have been if he had honored your heart with the care it deserved. He begins to notice small moments where the truth reveals itself without warning, the quiet evenings where he sits alone, the sudden pauses in conversations where he drifts into thought, the way his mind returns to your presence even when he tries to focus elsewhere. He thought time would erase the past, yet time has become the very thing that magnifies it. He once believed strength meant turning away, leaving emotions behind, pretending nothing mattered, but now he understands that real strength would have been staying, listening, choosing kindness when pride felt louder. The shame he carries is not loud or dramatic, it rests deep in his chest, steady and persistent, reminding him that the person he hurt was the one who once stood by him without hesitation. And now, as he confronts this truth, he feels a fragile shift within himself, a quiet awakening, as if life is gently guiding him toward the very lessons he once refused to learn. There are moments where he wishes he could step back into the past, not to erase what happened, but to stand differently in the moments where he failed you. He imagines conversations where he would have listened instead of walking away, moments where he would have chosen patience instead of distance, times where he would have recognized your tears not as weakness, but as a courage that came from loving deeply. These thoughts linger in his mind like unfinished sentences, reminding him that growth often arrives too late to change what has already been written. He now understands that remorse is not about sorrow alone, it is about clarity, about finally seeing the value of what he once overlooked. And as he carries this awareness, his heart grows heavier not because he misses what you shared, but because he finally understands the weight you once carried in silence. With each passing day, he begins to see himself differently. The image of the confident person he once projected fades, replaced by someone more honest, more vulnerable, more aware of his own imperfections. He realizes that life gave him a chance to rise into a better version of himself through love, yet he chose comfort over growth, ego over humility, fear over truth. And now, the lessons he avoided have returned, not to punish him, but to transform him from within. He feels a slow, steady shift in his perspective, a deep respect for the strength you showed, for the patience you carried, for the grace with which you stood even when you were hurting. That understanding becomes a turning point in his journey, a realization that the story did not break because love was weak, it broke because he was not ready to honor it. And in this unfolding realization, my beloved child, the focus gently shifts back to you, not as a memory in his mind, but as a symbol of resilience, healing, and quiet transformation. You are no longer the person who waited, who endured, who carried unspoken pain. You are the one who rose from it, who found strength where others would have fallen, who learned that your worth was never defined by the way someone treated you. His shame may follow him through his days, his growth may come slowly through reflection and regret, but your journey moves forward with purpose, with clarity, with a heart that has learned to choose peace over sorrow. And even now, beneath the unfolding layers of truth, something deeper is still forming, a powerful moment ahead where life reveals that every ending you survived was leading you toward a new beginning that carries far more meaning than anything you left behind. Beneath the quiet surface of this unfolding journey, a deeper realization begins to bloom inside him, not sudden, not grand, but steady like a rising tide that refuses to retreat, carrying with it every truth he once tried to bury. He walks through his days now with a fragile awareness resting inside his chest, and every step he takes feels heavier than the last, because the world keeps reflecting back to him the value of what he once dismissed. The spaces that used to feel comfortable now echo with questions he cannot escape, questions about who he was, what he chose, and how easily he turned away from the one person who stood beside him with unwavering faith. He remembers moments where you believed in him more than he believed in himself, where your presence brought calm to his storms, and now those memories return not as comfort, but as a quiet ache that settles deep within his heart. He finally understands that the strength you showed was not ordinary, it was rare, irreplaceable, something he should have protected instead of taking for granted. He notices now how life has shifted around him, conversations feel different, laughter feels distant, and even the smallest details in his world seem to carry a reminder of what he lost. There are times when he pauses mid-thought, mid-sentence, mid-breath, because a memory of you suddenly crosses his mind, and he feels a heaviness he cannot put into words. He recalls the moments when he chose pride over understanding, when he believed silence was easier than vulnerability, when he convinced himself that walking away meant control, and now he realizes that every one of those choices carved a deeper distance not just between the two of you, but within his own soul. The shame he carries now is calm, steady, and unavoidable. It is not anger, not fear, but a deep, reflective honesty that forces him to confront the truth that you were never demanding, you were simply offering love in its purest, most patient form. There are nights when he sits alone and feels time slowing around him, as if the universe is gently placing every memory in front of him to examine one by one. He thinks about the tears you never showed, the strength you carried without recognition, the quiet ways you stayed even when your heart was breaking. He realizes now that you never asked him to be perfect, you only needed him to be present, to be sincere, to be kind. And in that realization, he feels something inside him shift, something that brings both pain and clarity. He understands that true regret is not about wishing the past away, it is about finally seeing its meaning. He now knows that the real loss was never just losing you, it was losing the version of himself he could have grown into if he had chosen compassion over ego, humility over stubbornness, love over fear. With this awareness, he begins to look at life differently. The person he once tried to appear as, confident, unbothered, distant, no longer feels real to him. Instead, he sees a man learning to face himself for the first time, acknowledging his flaws, recognizing his mistakes, and accepting that growth often comes through the quiet discomfort of truth. He understands now that change is not loud or dramatic, it is slow, honest, and deeply personal. He carries your memory not as a wound, but as a lesson, a reminder of what love truly means when it is given with patience, trust, and sincerity. And in his heart, a hope forms, not for a return to what once was, but for the chance to become someone who will never again treat love with carelessness or pride. And as this chapter unfolds, my beloved child, the light shifts gently back toward you, toward the strength you discovered in your healing, the peace you built from your pain, the grace with which you rose above everything you endured. You are no longer defined by what happened, no longer shaped by the weight of his choices. You have grown into someone wiser, steadier, and more powerful than you ever realized. His shame belongs to his path, his lessons, his transformation, while your journey moves forward with dignity, clarity, and a heart that has learned to value itself beyond apology, beyond regret, beyond the past. And even now, beneath the stillness of this moment, something greater continues to build ahead, a quiet promise that the future waiting for you holds more meaning, more purpose, and more light than anything that was ever taken from you. My beloved child, in this unfolding silence, a deeper wave of realization settles inside him, and this time it does not arrive as pain alone, but as a profound awareness of how every moment of his past now stands before him like a mirror he can no longer turn away from. He walks through his days with a quiet heaviness, carrying thoughts that linger longer than they ever did before, and he feels the weight of understanding pressing gently but firmly against his heart. The world around him has not changed, yet everything feels different to him, every familiar place, every repeated routine, every ordinary moment now holds a trace of your memory, a reminder of the presence he once pushed aside. And now, he finally understands the truth that life kept trying to teach him, that the person he once overlooked was the very person whose strength, compassion, and patience were guiding lights he did not know how to value when he had the chance. He finds himself reflecting on the past with a clarity he never allowed himself to see before. He remembers the conversations he brushed away, the moments he turned distant, the times he chose silence instead of understanding, and now those choices return to him not as simple memories, but as lessons carved into time. He realizes that you were never asking for too much, you were offering something rare and honest, something that came from a place of sincerity and trust. And as he revisits those memories in his mind, he feels a calm but undeniable sense of shame, not because he has been judged by the world, but because his own heart now holds him accountable. He understands that he was given the chance to grow beside someone who believed in him, and instead, he allowed his pride to build walls he was never ready to face. There are moments when he sits alone and feels time slow around him, as if every second is gently guiding him deeper into his own reflections. He thinks about the strength you carried in silence, the way you stayed when it would have been easier to walk away, the quiet resilience you showed even when your heart was heavy. And in that realization, he begins to see how profoundly he misunderstood what real strength truly looks like. It is not found in distance, not in indifference, not in pretending feelings do not exist. It is found in patience, vulnerability, and the courage to care even when it requires effort. Now, as he looks back, he understands that you were never weak for loving, you were strong for enduring, for believing, for giving him the chance to rise into the person he could have become. Through this awakening, a shift begins inside him, slow, sincere, and deeply human. He no longer sees himself through the lens of the image he once tried to project to the world. Instead, he begins to see the truth of who he was and the distance he must travel to become someone better. His regret is no longer just an emotion, it becomes a turning point, a quiet inner transformation shaped by honesty and humility. He carries your memory not as a burden, but as a guiding lesson, a reminder of the care he mishandled and the responsibility he now holds within himself. And though he cannot return to the past or rewrite the moments he once ignored, he understands that the only path forward is through growth, accountability, and the choice to never again treat love with carelessness. And as this realization settles, my beloved child, the light returns to you, to your strength, your healing, your journey beyond everything you endured. You are no longer defined by his actions or by the pain you once carried in silence. You have grown into someone wiser, someone steadier, someone who found strength not in revenge or resentment, but in resilience and self-worth. His shame belongs to his path, his lessons, his transformation, while your life continues forward with grace, clarity, and a heart that has learned to honor itself. And even now, beneath the surface of everything that has unfolded, something greater still waits ahead, a quiet and powerful promise that your story is moving toward a future filled with meaning, peace, and light beyond anything the past could ever take from you. My beloved child, as this final chapter unfolds, the world around him feels quieter than ever, and within that silence he discovers a truth he can no longer escape. Every choice he made, every moment he dismissed, every step he took away from you has led him back here, to a place where his heart must finally face itself without hiding behind pride or excuses. He walks through familiar spaces that now feel distant, carrying the weight of reflection inside him like a tide that rises without noise yet transforms everything it touches. He realizes that the story he once believed he controlled was never about power or distance, it was about responsibility, about the fragile nature of trust, and about how deeply a single decision can echo across time. And for the first time, he understands that regret is not a weakness, it is a doorway into honesty, a mirror that shows the difference between who he was and who he must now choose to become. He feels the presence of the past not as a shadow haunting him, but as a lesson guiding him forward. The memories that once felt distant now sit gently within his heart, teaching him that love is not something to possess, but something to honor. He recalls the strength you carried in moments he never truly saw, the quiet courage in your silence, the resilience in your patience, and now he understands that you were never fragile, you were extraordinary in ways he was not yet mature enough to recognize. That realization humbles him, softens him, reshapes the way he views himself and the world around him. He recognizes that growth does not erase mistakes, but it transforms the soul that made them, and in that transformation, a deeper awareness begins to awaken within him. There are evenings where he stands beneath the sky and feels the vastness of life stretch out before him, reminding him that every experience leaves a mark, every connection holds meaning, and every heart deserves to be treated with care. He understands now that the greatest weight he carries is not the loss of what once existed, but the knowledge of how differently he wishes he had walked beside you when life gave him the chance. Yet within that realization, there is no chaos, no bitterness, no desperation, only a quiet acceptance that his path must now be one of accountability, humility, and sincere transformation from within. He carries your memory not as a wound, but as a guiding light that teaches him to move through the world with more compassion, more awareness, more respect for the hearts he encounters. And as his journey continues in silence, your story rises beyond the echoes of the past. You have walked through seasons of waiting, of reflection, of healing, and from each one you emerged stronger, steadier, more deeply rooted in your own worth. You are no longer defined by the hurt he caused or the guilt he now carries. You stand in a new chapter of your life, one shaped not by what was lost, but by what you found within yourself, courage, clarity, and a strength that could only be discovered through resilience. The universe now aligns around your growth, guiding you toward paths where your heart is seen, valued, and honored with the gentleness it always deserved. And as this final moment settles, my beloved child, the greatest revelation becomes clear. His shame may have awakened his conscience, but your healing awakened your destiny. You did not break in the silence he left behind, you transformed. You rose from the weight of the past with grace, and now your journey moves forward toward a horizon filled with purpose and light. The story no longer belongs to regret, it belongs to your strength, your evolution, your unwavering spirit. And somewhere in the quiet distance, life whispers a promise, that every step ahead will meet you with deeper peace, richer meaning, and a future shaped not by what hurt you, but by the powerful soul you became.